technologies used to conduct surveillance?
Hi guys, everybody who's online. We are at the Defenders Day in Stockholm, and just shortly our Erka Koivunen cybersecurity advisor will be having his keynote on cybersecurity and mass surveillance. We're just about to start the event, and we'll just need to wait for a while. Welcome everybody.
So everyone, please have a seat, and we will move into the final session of this second day of Defenders Days. I'm happy to see so many of you, and I sincerely hope that you have had a great day with lots of discussions and debates and learning and networking and so forth. I would like to start this last session with asking you a question. How many of you sitting here have actually suspected that you have had your phone tapped or someone been looking into your communication or information on your computers? Please raise your hands. So about half of you? And the Russians haven't even put on their headphones yet, so I guess the percentage will increase with 130,000% when they have done that. So how many of you who suspect that someone have tampered with your communication have actually done something about it? No, quite many, but it leaves a couple of questions when I see less hands raised. But I think that those questions are actually what we're going to discuss at this last session. And next to me I have two fantastic and impressive persons. I will not go into their series because I will spend half of this seminar because they have tremendous background. To my left, I have Jeffrey Vokulida-Sebagal, who's an Ugandan journalist, technologist, human rights defender from Unwanted Witness. And to my right, I have Erka Koivunen, who's it's a very sexy title, one of the world's leading cybersecurity experts. That's really cool. Well, bring it on. And Erka is representing F-Secure. I think that we'll now listen to, as well, I was telling you about yesterday, about both inspirational, educational and forward-looking. I think this session really comprises it all. And I am very happy to leave the floor to the two of you. Welcome.
Thank you, Robert. We arrange our session me starting with a presentation, a short keynote about how I feel about the state of surveillance and the state of security, cybersecurity, our communication systems. I would like to first introduce myself. I used to be the head of Finnish National Cyber Emergency Response Team, CERT Finland. I used to be the head of Certify for 10 years, and prior to that I used to be working for a telecommunications provider. My task was to ensure that all the information security breaches within the customers or within the company would need to be taken care of. So my approach to security and communications technology, computer technology, is from the dark side. I always see systems fail. I never expect them to fully function, and I always anticipate that somebody is there with an intention to take over the integrity of our systems. So I never trust any computer. I never trust even a toaster nowadays. They are always connected to the internet. I joined F-Secure last summer, and as an advisor, my job is to speak the uncomfortable truth outside for external audiences like you, and inside within the company, to let us know that whatever it is that we're doing, we have to be better in defending our customers and the public at large against those cyber threats. We all use internet to conduct our business and to communicate with our loved ones and to propagate our messages, exchange information, and internet has given us many degrees of freedom that we didn't have, let's say, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. The original idealistic target and aim with the adoption of the internet was that it should survive physical destruction, and it should survive malicious attempts to take down portions of that network. The original activists and the original programmers of the internet had a saying that the internet treats censorship as a damage and tries to reroute around that censorship. That was based on the notion that the internet was self-adapting to reroute traffic whenever portions of that network were deemed unreachable. Still nowadays, we kind of take that mythical feature of internet for granted. We kind of assume that, yeah, the network is there, it's there for our benefit. Internet stands for freedom, and internet provides that freedom for us, even without us even having to try to do anything about that, without us even having to pay attention to that. And I'm pretty sad to say that this is nowadays not true anymore. Internet doesn't fix itself. Internet not only doesn't reroute around censorship, internet is currently designed in a fashion that it enforces censorship. It enforces and it leverages capabilities for interception and mass surveillance, tracking, location, and whatnot. If you become a target, it is next to impossible for you to escape that dragnet. I want to show you a gallery of adversaries that I see in my profession, and I then would like to proceed with my presentation highlighting one of these adversaries. So typically we divide the so-called threat actors, the attackers, the bad guys, in 5 different categories. These jumpsuit fellows are hackers. They typically are good-natured, well-intentioned. They are interested in technology, and they want to see what happens when they tweak a bit. They might occasionally cause some damage and harm, but they typically don't intend to cause harm to, for instance, you guys. Hacktivists. Some of you might be considered hacktivists. You use networks, computing, technology to propagate your message. You are activists in the network. Some hacktivists resort to criminal actions. Let's say those guys who wanted to expose tax havens. They broke into a law company, law firm. They stole away email conversation and customer information, and they made it public. This is an act of activism, and that's like making a statement, pretty pretty bold statement and pretty public statement, and yet there's some collateral damage when people's personal information is being exposed. Not everybody was taxed afterwards, I would imagine. All right, criminals, that's easy to explain. Whenever there's money, power, people gathering, we're bound to have criminals there. This group of adversaries are most important for us today, in this audience at least. Nation states, governments, intelligence organizations, military installations and organizations, they want to exploit the powers of internet to gain their targets. They want to reach out to their targets and victims who are on the other side of the world. They want to track them. They want to listen in on their phone conversations. They want to read their emails. They want to know the contents of their mobile phones and computers. They are well-resourced and they are pretty persistent. A criminal might divert to some other victim if you are too tough nut to crack. If you have been deemed a target for an intelligence organization, they're going to be trying and patiently trying again until they succeed. Lastly, extremists and terrorists would also want to either exploit the internet resources or to take down internet. So this is the rogue gallery, and definitely the governments and nation states would pose a threat if you would be human rights activists, if you would be working against their agenda, if you would be working inside a dictatorship or in a country where rule of law would not be obeyed. Right. These are really powerful enemies, which leads me to tell something about the victims. We as a company, we provide not only antivirus software and security software, but we also provide services in terms of incident response, forensics. The victims of cybersecurity breaches turn to us and they seek assistance. And based on what we have seen, based on what I had seen when I was still working with Finnish government and within the telecommunications provider, I'm pretty confident to say that there are two types of organizations. Those that have been breached and those that have been breached but who don't know about that yet. That's pretty gloomy if you come to think of it. If you have been deemed a target worthy enough of launching a cyber attack, breaching your systems, you have been breached. You probably would not know about that if the attacker is good enough, well enough resourced. Alright. Now, these powerful enemies and the nation states, mostly, they have one good advantage on their side. They can regulate. Whoever is providing software, hardware, or services inside of the networks, off the networks, or on top of the networks, has to obey the regulation when they are producing something inside the market that they are operating. The governments can regulate and they can demand that this and this communication system has to be equipped with capacity of intercepting traffic. The United Kingdom government is currently proposing legislation that would grant pretty broad powers to their intelligence and law enforcement agencies to eavesdrop on people's communication, to breach somebody else's computer systems. Finnish government is considering proposing that kind of legislation. Sweden already has legislation about eavesdropping internet connections. I would imagine that Russian communications interception is based on legislation. So this is taking place on a really wide scale. I come from Finland. Our company comes from Finland. There are pretty strong privacy traditions in Finland. The privacy protections are provided from the Constitution of Finland, and the authorities cannot bypass those protections. That is why they are actually nowadays, when they are introducing signals intelligence legislation, they have to go the hard way and change the Constitution first. So our company is headquartered in Finland, but so is network equipment manufacturer called Nokia. One of their fiercest competitors is Ericsson, that's based in Sweden. Right. Two large network equipment providers residing here in the safety of our Nordic culture, enjoying the strong privacy protections of Finland and Sweden. And then, a couple of years ago, Nokia was accused of providing interception technology to Iranian government. And Iranian government was using that technology to target their own citizens, to eavesdrop their communications and then arrest those people based on what they heard, what they were able to read. And Nokia was accused fiercely in media by the politicians that this is unethical to provide that type of interception capabilities to a suppressive regime. What the Finnish media, what the Western media that was so outraged about the actions of Nokia failed to understand was that the interception capabilities that their system, the Nokia systems had, were regulated by Finnish government, European Union, United States regulation requires that whatever telecommunications equipment is being manufactured, sold, and deployed in the network must have lawful interception capabilities. You would be breaking the law if you would be manufacturing system without that. If you would be a telecommunications provider offering services without the capability of targeting individual subscribers and copying their traffic, you would be held legal responsible of that. So while it was now so outrageous that Nokia was selling that technology to Iran, it is widely accepted and never discussed about that this is actually something that they cannot provide the equipment without. And that's widely used here in Sweden and in all countries. There's also another anecdote. When the Soviet Union was still alive and kicking, not necessarily well kicking, but it was still alive, they were slowly adopting and renewing their communications infrastructure. They were dismantling the analog phone networks and adopting digitalized networks. They were also adopting internet technology. And KGB at the time did not have the capacity and technology to eavesdrop on digital communications. They were not able to tap into internet communications. And at first they tried to delay the adoption of new technology on the grounds that it was difficult for them to monitor the use of those networks. And this is remarkable, that was inside their country. They were not doing foreign intelligence, that was internal intelligence. But when they finally gave up and let the communications providers to modernize their equipment, the KGB just shrugged their shoulders and decided that let's purchase the Western technology because it is not only compatible with the modern networks, but it also comes in handy with the interception capabilities built in. They just turn those features on and make a good use of that. So, we typically, at least here in the northern European countries, we kind of feel that privacy protections are taken for granted. Everybody probably obeys the law. The high-tech companies that we host respect the privacy of users. And we explain it to ourselves that whatever eavesdropping technologies we develop and deploy, they are governed with some sort of a democratic process, rule of law, checks and balances, and oversight mechanisms to limit the abuses of power. And then these same technologies are being sold to dictatorships, oppressive governments, corrupt countries, and only the technology is being transported, not the values. So whatever, and it has been really interesting for me when I've been participating in not only the Finnish and the UK legislation, but also, let's say, the Danish intelligence and law enforcement reforms, is that now that the governments want still more mandate, that they would like to acquire still more technology to eavesdrop on their citizens, they fail to understand that there's now proliferation of that technology to a part of the world where even the not that perfect checks and balances that we still have here are not being obeyed at all. I have one case still from Iran. Some years ago, one Iranian citizen was using Gmail. He was trying to reach his Gmail mailbox. And for some reason, the browser he was using warned that perhaps there's now somebody trying to eavesdrop this communication. It turns out that there was a legitimate certificate assigned to Google's name, but the Chrome browser, which is Google's supplied browser, noticed that even though this is provided by a certificate authority that is supposedly respectable, it is not the CA, it's not the certificate authority that Google as a company uses. So it showed a warning to that user. That user then posted that error message to a public Google technical advice support page, and all hell broke loose. It turns out that that certificate authority that had issued that certificate for Google was a Dutch-based company here in Europe called DigiNotar. That certificate authority had been breached. Their cybersecurity controls had been breached earlier, and Iranian government supposedly had taken over the technological foundation of that company so that they were able to issue certificates under other companies' identities at will. One of these certificates was meant for Google, but they have dozens of others. when this was finally discovered, basically all of the public information infrastructure and the e-government of the Netherlands had to be shut down, because that same certificate authority was providing government certificates and basically the electronic trust to the whole Netherlands. The government of the Netherlands had to eventually take over that company and force it to be shut down. And this whole avalanche was triggered by one vigilant internet user in Iran noticing that somebody might have an agenda against him and his peers. This adversary would be working on an internet level with the capacity of not only stealing the communications but also decrypting encrypted communications with a trickery like that. And it caused quite a lot stir here in Europe. And again, that was discovered by accident. Most of these incidents are not even discovered at all. That one person in Iran was really brave enough to speak about that, and I would really want to take hats off to the Google engineers for voluntarily equipping their software components with intruder alerting mechanisms that basically the browser didn't require that functionality in order to do its job. But Google realized that a threat of that kind of man-in-the-middle attack is severe enough so that they would need to have a mechanism to warn about that. Alright, so now that we have been shown that this is actually taking place, there are powerful adversaries for us. This would be a call to you to now figure out what is it that you can do in your own behavior to actually safeguard your online presence, to safeguard your nearest ones, your colleagues. And I would urge you to make good use of the existing security technology that there is. Never in the history of mankind have we had access to so good encryption technology with so little costs. How much does WhatsApp cost? It only costs your privacy, but it doesn't cost a penny. So you can acquire WhatsApp for free. And since a couple of days, WhatsApp has been providing strong end-to-end encryption for your chats and voice calls. There's also a program called Signal that you can use that provides similar type of services. Our company produces untrackable anonymous VPN services that you can use to hide away your traffic. And actually, when you are leaving this room, we will be providing you with free copies of that software. So it would be really easy to start protecting your online presence, your communications, now that you know that there are adversaries that are trying to take advantage of you. So with this topic keynote, I would like to turn to Jeff. You are now living and working in Uganda, and we just, when we were preparing, we saw that the Ugandan government like to see social media sites shut down or access to those blocked. Why would you think that is?
Thank you. This is really very interesting for me. Painting a picture from the westernized style of, should I say, everything seems to be westernized, and they automatically any regime, for instance, in Africa or in Uganda, per se, or East Africa, will always really rely on these very technologies really to harass or attack citizens. The most important thing is the growing repressive regimes seem to be fearing citizens. There are people, they fear them. So when you look at the physical space, for instance, in East Africa, or particularly in Uganda, which has really been narrowed from freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, opinion, thought, the traditional media has completely been killed. Even the civil society organizations like NGOs, there are repressive laws that have been put in place to guard. Now, the fear here is that they even fear that citizens themselves will organize online. Organize online either to do what happened in the Arab Spring or otherwise. So a government like the one where I'm coming from would be automatically interested to switch, to muzzle, to block, but also will be so much interested to know what is happening when people communicate, when people get to use social platforms. And to me, it's not a surprise. Then the question to me, which comes now, the way we've done it well in the keynote, everything is westernized. Who do we trust here? With our data, with our communications, with almost everything. So we are almost being stripped naked. So who do we trust? And when everything is westernized.
Yeah, the technology that is produced with the high Western ethical standards, it looks like it's being turned against you. That is the feeling. Yeah, in cybersecurity in general, I think that it is really difficult to identify whom to trust in the first place. There are like really ideological barriers and fault lines where the so-called open source and free software society would like to see everything source code public so that everybody could review the contents of the software so that they can decide whether it contains backdoors. How many of you in the audience would be capable of reading operating system level source code and determining whether that's good? How many of you know your cryptography good enough so that you can decide that the algorithm has been implemented well enough in C?
I think not.
Yeah, none of us would be capable of doing that. So we would need to trust somebody. I used to work for a telecommunications provider, and now currently I'm one of the most vocal proponents of technology based on encryption that would bypass the telecommunications provider's network. You would want to have strongly encrypted channel of communication that the carrier network owner, the core network owner, would not have any visibility inside. That's why I was proposing that you adopt the use of WhatsApp or Signal or BGP when you want to hide the contents of your communication. But that doesn't hide away the fact that you're actually communicating. And with the social media block, that is actually pretty clear that once you are using technologies that hide the content of the communication, you might attract the interest of the intelligence services and law enforcement because they want to know what is there that you want to hide so bad.
I mean, okay, during the keynote, you also mentioned the case of UK, which is simply fighting end-to-end encryption. And now you're saying you must find someone ready to trust. So if Uganda and UK, one of them is a correlating the other. And if UK is fighting end-to-end encryption, when we see Uganda is blocking internet and social media use, is there anything that we're getting to learn in terms of trust? If a UK company is producing software or hardware or services, are we safe? For instance, those who are using services or a company in UK.
That's a good question. I guess I would like to draw from the experience of FBI versus Apple case. Apple is providing operating system and devices for a global market. They have recently adopted a position that they want to respect their users' privacy. They don't want to see the contents of their communication. And FBI recently wanted Apple to create a backdoor so that they could read the contents of a mobile phone. And US government was using legal means that they have at their disposal to force Apple to do that. And Apple could have taken the easy route and to comply. They would basically have the technological capability of providing that kind of backdoor. We, as a customer of Apple products, might have decided that this is something that we don't tolerate. This might be something that we would vote it against with our voice. We don't know. But for some reason, Apple wanted to resist the requests from the US government. They fought in the court. They decided that they don't want to create that backdoor because that would weaken the security of us all. And I'm not quite sure how many of you know, but the US government lost that battle in the sense that they gave up. They told Apple that, all right, you can keep your integrity, your software integrity. We don't require the backdoor, at least for now. We found another mean, and they were using, as so far, undisclosed vulnerability to attack that mobile phone and to get the contents of that mobile phone. And I think that was victory for us all, because now we know that at least Apple has the stomach to resist that kind of a coercion of government insisting that they would need to create backdoors. So Apple would be working now for you. The vulnerability that was exploited in their mobile phone probably would cause a threat to us all until it's being fixed. And someday, I would imagine that quite soon in the future, Apple will find out what type of a vulnerability that is. They are going to be fixing it. They are going to be shipping out software update. You will be installing it, and you will be way safer. The alternate outcome would have been that Apple would have been forced to create the backdoor and sign that backdoor with their software signing key and ship that update to all their customers. And the next time that you are receiving Apple provided update, you would be really hesitant to install that, because you would be knowing that that would introduce new mechanisms to surveil your communication. I think that the current situation, how this battle ended, was a victory not only for Apple and Apple customers, but for the software industry that still has some ethics left. Our company, since we're providing security, we depend on our customers trust. If our customers don't trust the piece of software that we're providing on their computers and mobile phones, we will be out of business. And we're not providing software updates once a month like Microsoft is doing. We're producing updates pretty much every 15 minutes. We want our customers to accept and receive those updates as soon as possible, because that makes them more secure. So that type of indirect messages of corporate integrity and high ethics, you should pay attention to and decide based on that whom to trust, which technology, which providers to trust, and which portions of the untrustworthy infrastructure you can bypass by using those technologies.
When you look at some of the companies that, for instance, the Apple in the United States, which have probably succeeded because of the strong legal regime, and you look at cases of Alcatel, Nokia, and probably Ericsson, we seem to be really at the verge that to lose more. How do we ensure that this is really the rightful, probably product that I can use to safeguard me? Because there seem to be one case which is successful among the majority of producers of these technologies.
Yeah, again, since I'm a Finn, I'm supposed to be a pretty depressive. Finns are a pretty depressive company. So remember when we're going to dinner, if you want to have a depressing discussion, please sit next to me. So if you have a long time span and you try to figure out from the perspective of law enforcement and intelligence services, they have traditionally been pretty much okay to assume that the telecommunications providers and the telecommunications equipment manufacturers have been able to help them. They are ready to provide backdoors in their systems, and only for a really short period of time have we had market for non-backdoored, strongly encrypted, heavily defended systems from companies that would actively resist government requests to create those backdoors. So from the viewpoint of the intelligence services, this is a small, temporary anomaly which will soon be fixed. The UK bill, Investigatory Powers Bill, is an effort to put an end to that short anomaly. France is actually introducing legislation that would put company executives behind bars if they don't release unencrypted communications when the government asks. This is like European countries ruled by the law, and you can imagine what would happen if we would lose this battle here in Europe.
Well, it is really still a longer discussion or debate, and probably I will ask him one more question. I will ask Erka one more question, but probably soon after I answer that, we'll get back to you. If you have any questions, please try to prepare that. To be open just for about 5 to 7 minutes, and then wind up. But one of the things that concerns me more is that the company that we're going to talk about, they're looking for profits, right? And in doing
most companies,
they're looking for money.
They wouldn't survive if they didn't have profits.
Repressive regimes like in Uganda or Africa or other parts of the world, they have money, right?
Sure, yeah.
How's Situawi?
Well, it comforts me to realize that most of the globally operating companies would not be in their position. They would not be able to provide the services globally if they would be providing excessive services to oppressive regimes. And at the same time, I recognize that we, working in the cybersecurity industry, our company sees ourselves as defenders and goalies. And yet, there are other types of cybersecurity companies, like the Italian hacking team. They are happy to create easy-to-use, click-at-the-click type of intrusion software, software to do conduct targeted or mass surveillance, and they are happy to sell that to the highest bidder. There are mechanisms for controlling the export of those tools. There is a so-called Wassenaar agreement.
Which is voluntary?
These mechanisms, apparently they are failing because Hacking Team is an Italian company.
And Gamma is a German company?
Yes, and the Italian government has signed into Wassenaar. They should be limiting the export of those tools, and yet they are not. So, yeah, we are in a difficult position.
Indeed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, could you please give a round of applause to Erka for the real try to explain some of the hard questions I giving the panelists coming from the side. And I will open, like I said earlier, I will open Q&A. And he has got some gifts, really. So we'll take a few, and then probably the discussion will continue over the dinner. Can I know who's interested to pose a question to him?
I would suggest that the first question should be posed by a person with the size S.
Beautiful. Okay, I can see one hand there. Any other? Two? Okay. Yes, sir. Okay. And there's one here.
Thank you very much for your presentation. My name is Benedict. I'm from Tanzania. I'm representing Tanzania Human Defenders Coalition. Actually, the topic you presented is very interesting for us, given the fact that in Tanzania right now, since last year, the government has enacted the Cybercrime Act, which they tend to control and limit the space of civil society and human defenders. So my question is, in Tanzania, we're having this a large social network group called Jamii Forum. Jamii Forum is a platform which gives human rights defenders and other citizens to use the platform with a fake name and fake IDs, because it's a leading social network for whistleblowers and other HRD to disclose every corrupt transaction and tax evasion which are conducted by governments. So after the passing of the law last year, right now Jamii Forum has received more than 5 demand letters from police law enforcers requesting Jamii Forum to disclose the source or the IP address of the users of that website. And worse enough, the information that police needed is information of whistleblowers who exposing the issues of big corrupt transactions in Tanzania. So my question is, have you come across a situation like this, and what would be your advice with regard to a situation like this? Thank you.
Okay. There was a hand here. Okay.
Should we take the questions first and then this my memories?
Okay. Okay.
Right. Please answer that question first.
Please.
So, if I understood correctly, that forum is served, operated, provided from Tanzanian ground, and that is used by Tanzanian people. So that's domestic. All right, and the local legislation applies to that. And it seems that the legislation has been formulated in a fashion that the use of anonymizing services would be illegal. So even though you would not be expressing any illegal free speech type of actions, the mere fact that you try to hide yourself would be illegal. Am I correct to assume that?
Yes.
Yeah. So the natural first thing would be to try to move your communications infrastructure abroad. And to do that, you would need to take that forum abroad. And in order for you to reach that forum, you would need to have safe means of taking your users' communications to a foreign server. That would make it a bit way more harder for the authorities to issue takedown requests or warrants. But you would still need to understand that the local legislation would give the authorities formal grounds to at least conduct surveillance on you. So you would actually need to pay much more attention to operational security aspects. You don't want to get caught by merely utilizing that type of service if you don't have an agenda.
You seem to be referring to the local company with now government. But now I can imagine in the Ugandan context where when they bind the internet, they shut down the internet. People were using the international services. And people were using proxies, to access other social media.
Yeah, to bypass the blockages.
How are you trying to mean here that international company that produce software or hardware are not obliged to comply with local laws, in particular each and every particular country?
First, if we would be issued a warrant to reveal the identity of a user, we would be weighting these requests based on our local legislation in Finland. And if a foreign law enforcement agency would be issuing that, we would be asking them to approach Finnish police first, and they would then approach us. And if the crimes that are being accused are not crimes in Finland, we would not respond.
Let's begin another question.
So we would be providing additional level of security, and I would imagine that quite many other organizations would provide that. Sir, would you like to have a bag or a t-shirt?
Okay, can we have another question, please?
Hi, my name is Linda. I'm coming from Berlin from Human Rights Matter, and my question is more about, we talk a lot about software, and we're, trying to make that safe, but what about hardware? The computer of itself, how do you protect it? Because there are governments, to mention one, the US, which intercepts, hardware, computers. So I think it's also, more a question of, is there any work being done with those who manufacture computers and the idea of hardware itself?
Yeah, that is a pretty difficult question. I used to work for a government, so for a government itself, it's really difficult to rely on what type of software they are adopting and which type of hardware this is to be run on. And I think I got a message through when I tried to ask how many of you would be in a capacity of reading source code for a complex piece of software. How many of you would be able to dissect the central processing unit of a PC, or reading the contents of the RAM memory? How many of you would be knowledgeable enough of radio frequency technologies to see what type of tempest emanations would be leaving out from the equipment that you're using? Definitely the number of capable people and technology available to even verify that what you got and what you're holding in your hand is good, secure, and contains no backdoors, that's next to impossible. And then to add on top of that, you already know that in order for you to actually get that piece of hardware, it has to be shipped. There's a logistical path from the manufacturer to you as an end user, and that can be intercepted with new features added while it's being in transit to you. I'm a bit paranoid. I'm not sure if it shows. If it doesn't show, I will prove my point. If I just find my gear. Is it somewhere here? Yes. Whenever I'm traveling in potentially hostile environments, let's say in Sweden, I always take these safety tamper-evident bags with me, and I put my laptop inside there, because it could be the evil maid type of a cleaning lady who comes in and installs keyboard blockers in my computer. It could be that somebody wants to plant additional software and hardware components in the mobile phone charger that I'm using. For some stupid reason, when you are nowadays charging your mobile phone, you plug it into the data channel. You're feeding electricity to the same through the same port that also accepts data connections. So not only do you have to protect your mobile phone, but the charger that you are utilizing.
How many?
The former head of Department of Homeland Security told me that he's riding Tesla and he has an iPhone, and he doesn't dare to connect these two. He doesn't want his Tesla car to have connection, data connection with his mobile phone. So he had to buy a dumb device that you put in a cigarette lighter thingy in the car, so that the data connection will be disconnected. So yeah, it is really difficult. You can do tricks like this to ensure that at least when you got hold of the hardware, you would be safe. But still, you would need to choose whom to trust and which channel to acquire that hardware.
Thank you, Erka. Okay. May I, in the interest of time, I would love to give two questions to Erka. And now I don't know.
No, we're
Okay,
stopping.
this side.
This one. Thank you so much for listening.
Okay, we'll pick one.